So yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard gave another town hall event in New Hampshire. The clips of it are already starting to make the rounds on Twitter. Lots of people tweeting out, different snippets of what went on during this town hall event. But there's one portion in particular that a lot of people are paying attention to. Tulsi Gabbard is going to go in depth here from a recent article that just came out, I believe, maybe yesterday or the day before, from what she said in the town hall. And it pretty much exposed how a lot of the money was being spent on the war in Afghanistan. So, true to Tulsi fashion, she's going to break down and just rip this whole thing apart, pull no punches, and expose just how horrible and just how wasteful this entire war in Afghanistan is. So let's take a look at that and then we'll discuss.
And that issue is the cost of war. How many of you saw Afghanistan in the news today? A few of you. There was an article that was published in the Washington Post that linked to, I think, thousands of pages of documents that came from the government that were gotten through a Freedom of Information request that basically pointed to how for nearly 2 decades we, the American people, have been lied to about where our taxpayer dollars are going in Afghanistan and why. Now, if any of you have heard me say anything before, you know that I have been very focused on how we must end the waste and abuse that has gone on in our country's waging of these regime change wars, toppling dictators in other countries for so long that has cost us tremendously in American lives, cost tremendously in the lives of the people in the countries where we wage these wars, and that have cost us as taxpayers over $6 trillion since 9/11 alone. These are wars that have undermined our national security, strengthened terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, wars that we've waged in places like Iraq and Syria and Libya, and this ongoing war in Afghanistan where people are questioning more and more, what are we doing there? We're still spending $4 billion every single month in Afghanistan right now. Where are these dollars going? What objective are we trying to accomplish? How does that serve the best interests of our national security or the people of our country? And the harsh truth is, which is revealed in this article and these documents, is it has not served our national security interests. Nearly $1 trillion or over $1 trillion in Afghanistan alone has not been going to fight terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS to keep us safe. No. It's been going to defense contractors, the McKinsey Group, a consulting group. It's been going to private contractors to go and do this work in Afghanistan to build a little mini America there, to try to root out corruption in their government, to do all of these things. Towards what objective? These are things that the Afghan people themselves, only the Afghan people, can do for themselves and for their future. One of the So I mentioned, we're spending $4 billion every month in Afghanistan right now. We are hearing about proposed cuts to food stamps coming out of this administration that would save taxpayers $5 billion over 5 years. That same amount of money is what we're spending in Afghanistan in 5 weeks. Just to put these things in context. Some of the things that are cited in that article this morning is a government worker was in Afghanistan doing work for USAID, and their instructions were to spend $3 million a day in every town where they were doing work. Not to spend $3 million to do this or that or this or that. Nope, make sure you spend $3 million a day in every town that you're doing your work. And apparently this person had asked a visiting member of Congress who had gone there to Afghanistan, what would you do in your community with $3 million a day? How quickly could you spend that, and what would you spend it on? And that member of Congress said, I couldn't spend it that quickly. The cost of war has taken a tremendous toll on our country in immeasurable ways in the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform who never came home, whose families were forced to greet them at Dover Air Force Base as they stood there and watched the coffin unloaded from that airplane, draped with the American flag. The cost of these continuing wars that have nothing to do with strengthening our national security take a toll on every single one of us in every single community in this country as they take more and more money out of our pockets and out of the things that we need here at home. As our own government lies to us about what it's being spent on and how it's supposed to help us somehow. This must end. Enough is enough. No more lies. This is where the choice that you have before you as voters here in New Hampshire matters so much. And I know you take this responsibility as first in the nation very seriously. Experience matters. So as you're thinking about who best to lead us out of this mess, to bring our troops home from Afghanistan, to end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, it's taken more money out of our pockets and making the world and us less safe. Let's redirect our taxpayer dollars towards actually serving the needs of the American people, actually serving the needs of our communities and our loved ones. This is the change that I will bring about as your president and commander-in-chief, bringing the experience that I have of serving in Congress for 7 years on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the Armed Services Committee, on the Homeland Security Committee, focused on our national security interests and our foreign policy, combined with the experience that I just have personally as a soldier, still serving in the Army National Guard now for almost 17 years. That experience that I got serving overseas in the Middle East on 2 deployments where I saw firsthand every day the terribly high human cost of war. These experiences have prepared me to be able to walk in on day one to fulfill that responsibility as Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces, and gives you the peace of mind that I will remain very focused on that mission of service and putting country first every single day, and never bowing to the interests of the military-industrial complex and the foreign policy establishment that's gotten us into this mess in the first place. Thank you. If this is the kind of leadership that you would like to see in our country, I want to personally invite every single one of you to join us, to join this movement that we are building so that we can together work side by side to get the priorities on track in this country, to bring about the kind of fresh leadership that we so desperately need, that will lead us to a government that is actually serving the people. Thank you very much for your attention, your time, and your consideration.
Wow. Well, said speech. Very on point. Obviously, she made, she's trying to make a pitch for her presidency, but let's go back and examine what she was talking about, particularly with Afghanistan for a moment, okay? These, cuts to food stamps that the Trump administration is looking at. Now, I know what the pushback argument's going to be. Well, there's some people that just take advantage and game the system and yada, yada, yada. It's a very old right-wing talking point on the issue, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have seen people who do game the system. So while I do think there maybe could be some reform, the only problem when you look at reform is, unfortunately, when you open that door, the government, especially on the right-wing side of things, tend to not only just want to take care of those people, they just cut from everybody. They don't, they just cut across the board and hope they get some people that are gaming the system. It's not a very well designed process when those cuts are made, and there's probably going to be actually a lot of people who really needed them that it's going to be taken away from. But nonetheless, whatever, whoever's going to be affected by this in this particular instance, it's planning on saving us $5 billion over the next 5 years, I think is what she said. So we're roughly looking at $1 billion a year, right? Yet the war in Afghanistan, we're spending $1 billion a week. $1 billion a week. And she gave the personal story, where she's talked to people and they're being told, no, just wherever you're working at, spend, this many $1 million, a day. What? Wow. Okay. And then you wonder why our military budget is so ballooned. Of course, if you talk to a lot of the right-wingers, a lot of the Republicans, they're going to tell you that it's got to stay that pumped up because we're going around the world. We're protecting these countries. We're giving all these countries a nice big drink of some freedom juice here. No. There's a reason we spend way more on our military than the next so many countries combined, and most of them are our allies. There's a reason for that. And that's because there's a whole lot of military waste going on in the budgets that they do get. They're not running this thing properly. This is a ship with a busted rudder. That's exactly why people in the Pentagon blatantly admitted when they took an audit, finally, or earlier this year, I believe it was, that they didn't expect to pass. And buddy, let me tell you, they failed with miserable grades. Okay? And what was it? Shanahan, I believe, even came out and said, well, we didn't really expect to pass. What? And you're at the charge of this thing? At the time, I think if he wasn't in charge, he was like second in command or something. Really? You say that about one of the government programs that's possibly taken in more money than any of the rest of them, has misplaced almost $20 trillion since its inception, lost almost $20 trillion. That's almost enough to wipe out our debt entirely. And if we could rake up $22 trillion, and if we had that money back and we only had like a $2-3 trillion debt, yeah, well, it wouldn't be too much then to add another the cost for Medicare for all that they want to haggle about so much. Let's just say we tacked it all into the debt, that it was not paid for one bit whatsoever through taxes. You'd still only come out like what? If you had that $20 trillion back, you would come out literally, if you tack that on, you'd only have like a $34 trillion debt. Now, why you say, yeah, well, that's still a lot higher than what we got right now. To some extent, yes, but nonetheless, again, we wouldn't really be worried about all that. But it's like she just broke down. How much money are we wasting over there in the military? And yet they want to argue about the cost of providing health care, okay? All the things that are going on in this country, infrastructure that needs to be fixed. And that's what kills me. Earlier, I think it was this year or late last year, there was discussion that they wanted to build a military base in Niger. I've brought it up before on this channel, okay? We want to build a military base in Niger. But before we can build that base, we have to build surrounding infrastructure for that base. And who's paying for that infrastructure? Is it that country the base is going to be built in? Is it Niger? No. Who's paying for it? Me and you. If you're a United States citizen, your tax dollars are being used to build infrastructure in Africa or some other country to keep these military bases up all around the world. Your tax dollars will be used for that. But, well, the costs and blah, blah. some excuse, one right after the other, as to why your tax dollars can't be used to try and provide good health care, fix this infrastructure, make sure we got clean drinking water. No, anything that does something for the American people, that's no good. No, you can't do that. You got to do something that benefits these DOD lobbyists and contractors and keeps money pumping into this war machine that's a massive, wasteful war machine. So, I mean, yeah, dead on point again. Tulsi Gabbard, as usual, in a peaceful tone, a very, very peaceful tone, but still clear enough and decisive enough that she came across and just exposed exactly what was going on and was able to do it in a very presidential manner. And to me, great piece, great speech here. And the only thing I would say, I would like to see some more of out of Tulsi is I would really like to see her start becoming, a little more. I like the nice, persona. I like the presidential, the way she carries herself. But with what's going on right now, with the way she's being screwed, I think she came out with a more fiery attitude after the whole Hillary Clinton thing. Meanwhile, they're literally about to almost screw her out of this next debate. I think it's time to step on the gas. Yeah, you can be nice, but we need to start, stepping on the gas here, Tulsi, and come out with, swinging here. I think it's time to really turn the heat up a little bit, because you're going to have to start getting those eyes back on you, because I feel like now that they've started this blackout on you, if you keep playing softball, you keep playing nice, they're going to just keep pivoting those cameras to somebody else. You got to get up and make a stink here in a way, figuratively, okay? That's why the camera stayed on Donald Trump so much when he ran for office. That man was saying stuff that it just made the cameras turn to him all the time. And this is a good point that the Radical Independent made when I brought him over onto the program here. When I spoke to David, he said, you've got to have a candidate that it just sucks the air out of the room and those camera shifts to them. Tulsi can be that candidate when you get her worked up. And for what's going on right now, she needs to get worked up and step on the gas. So, yeah, I agree with what she said here 100%. It was very, very well put together, and it is definitely very informative. But I think it's also definitely time that, like I say, she step on that gas, turn the heat up some here, and really start cooking, because she's going to have to start playing hardball and keep calling people out. Keep taking some chunks out of people's backside, just like you did Kamala Harris, even if you don't make that debate stage. Do it in your speeches. Do it on some YouTube channel. Do it in interviews and all these places. Keep doing things like that, because it's going to start pivoting more attention to you. Even if the mainstream media doesn't want to get it to you, social media will be buzzing like a bee if you do this. And that will only help you in the long run. People might try and smear you and say, oh, she's attacking. We need to be unified against Trump. We need to be unified. Unified my ass. They're not unified with Tulsi Gabbard. Mainstream media is not unified. The only thing they're unified on is trying to shut her up and keep her off television and off that debate stage. That's the only thing that they're unified on. Okay, so this whole thing about, well, we need to be nice. No. They may try to smear you, but guess what? They've already been trying to smear Tulsi Gabbard, as you probably already know. Russian bot, Assad apologist, blah, 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 blah. Same old talking points we've been hearing for a really long time. So what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? If they're going to smear you, they're going to smear you. But if you step on the gas, get social media buzzing, and start taking some of these candidates down a couple rungs, because she's shown she can do it. Even through all these smear attacks, she's been dismantling top tier candidates. Okay? So she can do it, man. No doubt. And now's the time to be doing it. We're approaching this Iowa caucus. It's coming up early February. Okay? It's time to step on the gas, Tulsi, especially if you don't make this next debate stage. It's time to turn the heat up big time. And if you do, I think it'll only help you in the long run.